Hello, everyone, and welcome to McGill Cares webcast series, Supporting Family and Informal Caregivers. I'm Claire Webster, a former caregiver, certified dementia care consultant, and founder of McGill University's Dementia Education Program. I work with a dynamic team of leading healthcare professionals to oversee the program, who include Dr. José Moret from the Division of Geriatric Medicine and Dr. Serge Gauthier, Professor Emeritus, formerly of the McGill University Research Center for Studies in Aging. McGill Cares is supported by the Amelia Saputo Community Outreach for Dementia Care. The McGill University Dementia Education Program offers a comprehensive range of free resources to educate and support persons living with dementia, family and informal caregivers, healthcare professionals, medical students, and the public at large. One of our most important resources is our Dementia Companion Guide, which can be downloaded for free. You can also obtain printed copies, and it's now translated in 14 languages. So I really encourage you all to go and have a look at this very important guide. We've also recently launched in September of 2024 a free new online course, which has 10 modules. It's in English and French, and you can go at your own pace and really learn about all the aspects of dementia. And we also have some virtual support groups, so please have a look on our website for everything that we have to offer. So I'm very excited about the topic today, and the topic is going to be building your team for unplanned life transitions. And my guest is McGill alumnus Marc Séguin, MBA, and he's the author of a book called Advocacy and Aging, which is about estate and healthcare planning. And it was really influenced by his own personal experience helping families plan and deal with the inevitable changes in life that are triggered by aging, including dementia. And these experiences enabled him to develop the PACT framework, which is Plan, Activate, Communicate, Transition, which is an approach to maintaining continuity in financial affairs and personal care. So Marc, welcome to McGill Cares, and I'm really looking forward to your talk today.
Well, Claire and the McGill Cares team, thank you for having me today. It's such an honor to be part of this program. The library you've put together is just phenomenal. I've referred a number of people to it since I've discovered it. And knowing that I can add value to this library is quite gratifying. And really, thank you for having me here today. I'm especially pleased to be here today because really my journey that led to the development of the framework and ultimately my book, Advocacy and Aging, really started with the experience that I had with dementia. Both my in-laws had dementia, believe it or not, at the same time, which apparently is quite rare. And my mom had it many years later, and I was able to benefit from that experience and the work I had done on the framework. And really, I'm happy to be able to share this experience and a bit of my wisdom with this community. Enough said, and let's jump into the topic. And really, let's start with the story that really started my journey, which is my father-in-law, who retired at a young age of 58. He had a really successful career in business. And when he retired, he became quite passionate about financial planning for the future years, estate planning, and looking at various scenarios. He read so many books. However, in hindsight, of all the planning, he never planned on losing his mind. And as he lost his mind, in order to maintain control, he was a bit of a control freak, but that's okay, we all are. He started simplifying things in order to be able to keep a handle on the affairs. And we got wind of some of these actions that he had taken when we found out one day they had sold a pretty significant asset for 5 cents on the dollar. And when we found out about that and asked him, he said, well, basically he said, we didn't want to burden the family with these assets. We didn't think that you wanted them. And this is when the two daughters and the son-in-laws, which I'm part of, started getting involved. Fortunately, his dementia manifests itself with good collaboration, which is not always the case, as we all know. And we collaborated in terms of getting assessed. He was formally assessed. And at that point in time, he said, please help me not to make mistakes. And certainly enough, we started looking back on what had happened. And Fortunately enough, the changes they had made were not detrimental, but that's not always the case. And really, that's a big part of what got my attention. Uh, by working with him, fortunately, we were able to undo some of the actions. He had made some changes to investment with whom he was working, but he also made some changes to his will, which made things a little bit more complicated. But fortunately, we were able to put things back in place as his original wishes were when he was working hard at all this. All this to say is this got my attention, and I said, what can I do for myself in order to prevent that situation? How do we plan for really these unplanned situations? And probably dementia is one of those life transition that occurs over a gradual period of time, and it's only well into the journey that you find out. So, and many mistakes with great consequences could be made. This story is overall positive, but it's always the case. Even though I was trying to plan for all the permutation, in the end, it was a basic reality check and hypothesis that made me realize that, we're not only alive and going to be dead one day, we're actually probably going to go through a third state, which is alive and less capable, and we're going to require help. And whether we have degradation of physical abilities, mental abilities, and it's not only memory loss, it could be loss of reasoning skills and information processing. And that will require us to have some support from people that are around us. And really, that's the best introduction I could give you to why we developed the PACT framework. And so today's goal for me is really to introduce this PACT framework, which stands for Plan, Activate, Communicate, and Transition. And really, it's all in the name of prepare yourself for the unplanned, and hopefully that will generate peace of mind and allow you to have quality of life. The topics I'm going to cover today, I'm not going to go deep in financial planning, but I'm going to talk about the importance of being able to summarize a proper financial plan, advanced care and the importance of advanced care planning. We're going to talk about a legal foundation. I'm not going to go in a lot of details, but I'm certainly going to summarize what you should have as part of your legal foundation, but most important, how to activate it and the importance of activating early. One of the concepts that's become very popular through all of my talks is the concept of 24-hour readiness to transition. You'll hear more about that. And finally, and probably most important, is how to engage your family, the community around you, trusted party, to build this team of advocates that will be there to support you and help you in those critical moments of life transition, especially in the case of dementia, which we know can be a long journey. So to summarize what PACT means, it's all about planning, activating, communicating, and transition. We all know that planning is important, but a lot of us don't like to do it or procrastinate in doing it. And once we've done it, we all think the job is done. But really, that's where the job starts. Having a plan without anyone knowing about it and able to activate it on a moment's notice is not good enough. So I've evolved the thought process to say you not only need to plan, you need to activate your plan so that at a moment's notice, people could take over your affairs. Communication is critical. I think everyone knows that, but in this context of communicating truly what your wishes, your values, your beliefs are, your wisdom. So that's really what you passed on, and people will be able to pick that up should they need to manage your affair. And then the concept of transitioning. A lot of people think, I've earned my independence. I want to continue managing my affairs, but the likelihood is that at one point you will need some help to manage your affairs, and why not do it gradually and seamlessly? I, for one, will tell you that I'm not as sharp as I was 10 years ago, and why not involve my kids and family who are at the prime and could probably manage some of my things as well, if not better than me. So we'll go through each of those planning pillars, starting with the planning. Let's start with probably the most important part of any plan is the financial plan and estate planning. And as I mentioned before, I'm not going to go through details. There's a lot of experts that know about financial planning and wealth management and so on and so forth. Recently, I know Claire interviewed someone, so I'd encourage you to go and look at that particular webcast. But the one thing I'm going to tell you is I recognize a complete and proper financial plan and estate plan when it could be summarized on one slide in these three allotments. The first allotment being the money or the assets you require to live until the planning span, which is typically the age of 90 or 95 these days. So pull together, do a proper financial plan, adjust with inflation and the various cash flow change that will occur over the years. But you should be able to have a proper plan, tell you what you need in order to live the same lifestyle and quality of life that you have today until the age of the planning period. Now, everyone worry about money, and that's a normal fact. And you see people say, "Oh, I'm worried about not having enough," and some of the worries that people have, the risk is, what if I live past the planning period? What if I have exceptional expenses, either because there's a unplanned damage to some of my properties or exceptional healthcare, basic healthcare expense should be planned as part of your everyday spending. But the reality is, as you age, like the case of my in-laws, they both had dementia, and I could tell you when they were both in the assisted living, the costs were pretty high. So those are the kinds of exceptional circumstance that you really want to plan for. And then the third allotment is one that I see very seldom talked about or mentioned in an estate plan, is the money you'll never need. And why do you want to do that? Because once you have those clear allotments, then you can have conversations around your financial plan, not only with your financial advisors that typically give you nice spreadsheets and curves, but now in a simplified way to say, do I want to spend more in my lifestyle? Do I want to be protected more? Or do I want to gift while alive because I won't need this money? But you can have some really constructive conversation. To bring this alive and bring this whole topic alive, I'm going to tell you the story about my parents. My parents were of the generation that really were very proud of what they achieved and never talked money. Money was a bit of a taboo subject with the family. And really, all they have said to us is that, Marc, your sister and you are the executor on our will. The will is in the fireproof box in the cupboard there. And when the time comes, you will find everything you need. So that was pretty much, I think, the scenario for a lot of people. I had been involved a little bit with my parents. My dad had to make one little decision when he retired about his pension plan, but really didn't know much. My parents had a very humble lifestyle. I still don't know how they afforded to provide us what they did and how they afforded to have this unbelievable retirement. You can see the picture here. They were incredibly active through their retirement years and live an amazing quality of life. I had not been too worried because clearly they seem to be managing quite well, and they seem to have the funds to do that. I didn't think they had any debt. And my only reassurance is they had the home where they lived in paid for. And I knew that should something happen, that was always a buffer. But one day came and they phoned us on a Friday night in February, I still remember. And my mom was all happy to tell us that they sold the home and that they sold it to friends of theirs. So they were so pleased that their home was going to be lived in with some people that would take care of it and basically continue their legacy. That was all good news to us because they had moved from Montreal in the city to the Laurentians. And even though that provided them quality of life, it did require them to travel to Montreal too often, and very often at their age, they were driving at 11 o'clock after coming back from the concert and someone, and we were worried. So we welcomed the news. However, the next day I woke up and I said, what are they going to do with the money? Where are they going to move? And all of the experience that I had lived through with my in-laws of great expenses as you go through healthcare, dementia, that started worrying me. So all this to say is that I was worried that my dad and my mom would live past 100, so I didn't know whether it was a plan and so on. So I asked to meet with them, and we met on a Sunday. And it was a very special meeting because at that point, basically, I said that, I'd really like to know what their plans were. Where were they moving? Were they moving an apartment or a retirement home and so on and so forth? And I had blank stares. I asked what were the financial plans, and I had blank stares. And they said, well, our financial advisor will continue to invest the money as we did. And so I was a bit concerned, and I told them my concern. And I said, I'd be happy to get involved. My dad welcomed my involvement. My mom at first was not so much. But eventually I told her that, we as children are also worried whether we'll need to put on our own plan subsidies to help them should they live longer or have exceptional expenses. That pride fell down, and all of a sudden we started a good conversation. I won't go through the details, but we spent 6 months to put a plan together. And a financial advisor would tell you 6 months. I could do that in a few days. In fact, they already done a basic plan. I could probably do a plan in a short period of time. But the 6 month was important not only to build trust, to build this new relationship, really, and not work with my parents in that way, and to make sure that it was their plan, that it was really representing their wishes, that we were able to extract those wishes through conversation, and that both my mom and dad understood it. My mom was not as versed in financial, and in hindsight, she was actually going through early signs of dementia, and we wanted to make sure that she grasped the whole thing. All this to say, it was probably the most important and wonderful experience that I've had, and to this day, my dad is still alive. I still act on their behalf, representing their wishes the way they do things, not the way I do things. And so I couldn't have done it without not only that first 6 month period, but subsequent, our involvement and continuing that relationship. And we're going to talk a little bit more about all the other things that we did through that process. But all this to say, we're talking about financial planning, but I want to show you how we summarize the plan using this 3 allotment method. So you could see here that we have the 3 allotments. And what was decided, you could see in red how we redeployed the 200,000 really were the proceeds of the home. In this day, 200,000 is a lot and not a lot. What we found out when I started asking questions is there was a little bit more in their estate than I planned. I was quite surprised they had 250,000 in the assets, but up until that point, all those assets were really used for yearly spending. And because we wanted to make sure that there was some protection for long life and potentially retirement home expensive and eventually maybe healthcare expensive that had not been planned for, we ended up structuring the plan as such. So you could see here that we had figured out that through pension and old age security, there was 55,000. Through a lot of back and forth dialogue, we figured that a budget of 70,000 we could probably work through. And that was a little less than they had been spending, but it became important in order to create a bit of protection. And at that point in time, because we were worried about longevity, we adopted to buy an annuity, which at that point total an expense of 150,000, and it would yield 15,000 a year. So the beauty of this is that the plan now made it such that there was 70,000 of revenue coming in, and there were 70,000 expenses, which made it simple to manage. And as people age, and especially through dementia, you want to keep things simple. And we managed to segregate 300,000 of assets in order to protect for those exceptional circumstances. I'm going to tell you without details that that's not what the plan looked like when we started, and that's what we ended. And I could say that today, I probably could say that as my mom went through dementia, going from retirement home to assisted living where they had to pay 2 rent to the CHSLD or nursing home, we would say in the rest of Canada, through that whole process of dementia, through COVID and so on, the plan worked. There is still quite, if not all of the rainy day protection allotment. And my dad is now 98 and still be able to live a high quality of life that he has, which would not have been the case. The plan before would have called for the investment to deplete at 95-year-old, and we would not have been in a great situation as we are today. I want to quickly show you one slide very quickly how this 3 allotment could work for another couple in a different circumstance. This is a couple in their 60s. They're planning to retire. They're a self-managed pension, so they don't have work pension. And because of that, they've accumulated a fair amount of asset. They paid for their home. And this is how a plan would be structured again for this group, this young couple or young couple in the aging sense. But in order to live on a 120,000 budget, which is what they're striving for, they put aside 2.6 million of asset and various forms of investment. In order to keep things simple for protection, they decide to put their principal home, which is probably a greater amount that you would need, but still an easy way to do some planning without too many curves and spreadsheets. And then finally, the plan unveiled that, there's probably 500,000 VAS that they will not require. Again, I recommend very strongly that eventually a plan be summarizing these three allotments, and it's one to have a clear picture of the estate, but also to make sure that all parties involved understand this plan and be able to communicate and transition the estate in a simple way when time comes, and involve all the parties within your team. Now let's move on to the next dimension of planning, which is a legal foundation. I think it's quite well known that everyone should have a will. The statistics are still staggering. There's probably less than 60% or so that have a will in place. And if you ask people how many people would have reviewed in the last 5 or 10 years, it's probably only 40% of the population. So there's still a long way to go in the basic legal foundation. But more important today, because we live longer, are the requirement for power of attorney. In Quebec, we call it procuration. And you need a power of attorney for managing your property or assets, and one for personal care. And because we live longer and likely to have the greater capability, these are most likely to be invoked, which was not always the case generations before. So it's very important that not only those documents are in place, but you select the proper representatives, because as Claire will probably tell you, and you'll see in all the various webcasts, caregiving is a big job. And I'm going to say even the financial management of people's affairs is a big job. It could be a full-time job, if not more, for everybody. So those documents need to be in place, and you have to select the proper people. Now, less known and less applied today are healthcare directives. So I think the statistics is about 80% of the population have done some thought process of what we want about advanced care, but less than 25% would have put an advanced care plan, let alone a healthcare directive. And less than 40% would have communications with families and close friends. So what's a healthcare directive? Fundamentally, a healthcare directive is a document that summarizes your wishes, values, and beliefs as the outcome to an advanced care plan. So it's preempting and crystallizing what would be your decision, your thoughts in various healthcare situation and decision making. It is the foundation for reaching the point in your life, and hopefully, well, we don't often have these, but you may have a situation where care must be taken and a decision. Now, in general, the medical healthcare domain are meant to give you all the options of what our treatments could be taken in different situation, but ultimately a consent must be given for a treatment or certain kind of care, whether it's palliative care or other. And the reality now in Canada, especially in Quebec, we all know the option of MAID, and I think it's very important also to crystallize your wishes, not only around medical situations and treatment thereabouts, but also what are your values and wishes around MAID. And as Claire would know, because I think it's been part of a number of webcasts. One in particular was very good with I think it's Dr. Jocelyn Downey, which I referred to many people. So I think that putting in place an advanced care plan has become very important. And as an outcome, if you end up documenting, it's even better. But at least communicate it and crystallize your own wishes so they are known. Let's move on to the next letter of the PACT, which is A, an activation. And I have this concept of 24-hour readiness. So I'm going to tell you my basis and premise around this. I assume that at any moment in time, something could happen to me. I could end up in a hospital in a coma. And my objective is that my family be able to take over and operate my affairs within 24 hours. And I insist on the words operate, because it's not just knowing about your affairs and where you could find the files in the document. It's about knowing how I like to run my affairs, familiarity about my affairs, knowing that it's well documented so that if someone, and I'm going to say use my kids in this case, need to take over at a moment's notice, they know where to find all the information. It's well documented, it's complete. And when they want to act on it, let's say they need to go to the bank, they are authorized to act on my behalf. So when you start and think about it, to achieve that in 24 hours require a lot of work. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the two fundamental pillars to achieve that. And one is obviously to have the legal foundations to give the power of attorney rights to the individuals you selected. But I'm going to say that's not enough. You need to activate them. Anyone that has the experience about activating or going to the bank with a power of attorney knows that it's a tedious process, and it's there for the right reason because there's been so much fraud and abuse that the bank have to do due diligence. But doing it in a time of crisis is the wrong time. So I'm a big proponent to do it ahead of time and to activate your will. So going back to my parents' story, after the 6 months of putting a proper financial plan, I asked my parents to review their power of attorneys and wills and know what it does, what was written in it. And then in there, especially for the power of attorney for property, I made sure that I was the one assigned because my mom at that point was a certain age, not the best person to be the one, the delegate. So we did make the change. But also, once we had it, we did go to the bank and activate it so I could operate. And it was great because the bank created my own client card, gave me access to all the affairs. And just for everyone's information, I know a lot of people will say, well, it's okay, I have to use their ID and password. Fundamentally, it's not legal to use someone else's user ID and password. So I'm very much encouraging people to actually be proactive in that respect and do it today. And yes, believe it or not, I've done it at my age with my delegates, and my power of attorneys are activated. So that's you know the the approach that I'm advocating. I know that I'm probably less than 1% of the population's done it, but I think that's the new reality that we need to take into context. The other thing is having an organizer. As I said, all my affairs have been documenting, and I'm going to tell you with my own, I'm a bit extreme because of certain personal experience, but my organizer has about 40 pages, and my parents' organizer has itself about 30 pages. And I've shared that organizers with my siblings should something happen with my parents. But let me tell you a quick story because when my mom passed away 2 years ago, after her journey into dementia. I still remember I was on a bike ride at 1:30 in the afternoon when I got the call from my sister to tell me that my mom had passed away, and it was totally unexpected. We still don't know exactly what caused the death, but literally here I am on a Sunday at 1:30. By 5 o'clock, I had three quotes from three funeral homes. We knew exactly what we were looking for because it had been discussed. We had secured the priest that my parents had spent a lot of their life with and wanted for the event. And a few other of the logistic need to be organized. So within 4 hours. Why were we able to do that? Because we had had those discussions before. It was well documented. And we had it at our fingertip. The beauty of this all was that really the organization for the celebration of life became pretty simple, and we actually were able to pretty much celebrate my mom's life as we were planning because we were not scrambling. We had put in place already what was there, and I could tell you I still cherish that reality in that moment. I know I was drinking the Kool-Aid, but to see that it proved itself was really very much gratifying and rewarding. And that's why you want to do it because we all hear of some challenges people have through those circumstances and even some rivalry within the families that occur. So in this case, it was simple, it was quick, but most important, it respected what my parents' wishes were. Let's move on to a very quick, I'm not going to go through in details on this slide, but I think it's very important as we age and even at any point in life to try to organize your affairs, simplify, downsize, and document as much as possible. I just talked about organizer, pulling together an organizer, but in terms of reduction, consolidating all your financial accounts asset into one or fewer places really not only helps you, not only help the people that take over, but it'll help your financial advisors as well. So that's a good thing to do. Especially as people age in their life, I view it as half your life you spend accumulating assets and goods and sometimes junk. Why not spend the second half to enjoy it and deplete it, and certainly deplete the unused possessions? And I very much encourage that. And don't be offended if people, your children, don't want some of your affairs, and new generation don't always appreciate the old stuff. But go and find someone that would appreciate your unused possessions and would put them to good use. Transition some of the bigger assets like cottages and condos and foreign properties when appropriate, and then consider gifting while alive. You reap the benefit of your hard work, and if there's some assets that you'll never ever need, as per the three allotment approach, let's see people take advantage and you enjoy the benefit of it while you're alive. Now let's talk about communications. Of all the dimensions of the PACT, I think communication is the most important. And it's about building a group of people around you that will advocate for your wishes, that will champion you in situations that you can't expect today. I've divided the concept of a team into 5 sub-teams. Your core team are clearly the people close to you that you've put as delegates into your will and your power of attorney, and maybe some very close people you work with. Do not discount your advisors as the second sub-team. Financial advisors are important, but today you have advisors, social advisors, these are home care advisors, you have all kinds of advisors. Claire could probably tell you much more about that. But I think these are people that, are part of the group of people that will want to be there to help you and will help your family go through those difficult times. And they certainly will champion you. Close family, you think of the extended family, nieces, nephews, siblings, and so on. You never know. I've heard a story of a person that had no one in life but the long relative in Romania, but that was an important person. And keeping these people in mind is very important. As we age, your healthcare team may grow. Okay, and I think it's important to build a relationship with that healthcare team, your doctors, whoever may be involved, and so that they know your wishes and values. I could tell you today, I do have a healthcare directive. I've already shared my healthcare directive with my doctor, and my doctor felt, really pleased with this, because said not only was it complete, it was clear. And I know that should the situation occur to me, even though right now I'm all healthy, that should my family have a discussion with the doctor, they'll be on the same wavelength because they're sharing the same information. It's not coming as a surprise. And then there's what I call the extended team, and these people could be your neighbors, people with whom you work, and through association, so on and so forth. So, historically, if I look back at my parents, they had a great group of people around them, but when came time managing their affairs, they kept fairly private, independent. They felt proud about that. Really, we need to realize that people around us want to be there to support you when it comes time. So why not nurture that group of people and that sense of advocates, so that when comes time, they're well equipped to support you very well. So let's move on to the T of transition. And there's transition for your financial management and personal care. I'm going to tell you a little bit of what happened after the 6 months of planning with my parents. At that point in time, clearly, I was already well in the process of transition, because I had learned a lot about their affairs. I was very familiar with their affair, which gave me a good starting point. At that point in time, my dad was quite well and capable of managing the day-to-day expenses. He really did not like the investment side. So we separated our jobs, with him managing the day-to-day budget, that first allotment of everyday spending, and I took over the rainy day protection allotment. And that worked out very well, but it also got me familiar. And through the process, I was shadowing his affairs. And sure enough, he was actually having difficulty managing the budget and meeting the budget. And it's not because necessarily the budget was wrong, is there some dynamic that had evolved within the couple of my parents. My parents had, like I said earlier, had a humble lifestyle and could manage quite a tight budget, but somehow what I assumed they could do very well, they had lost that magic formula. And there was some dynamic between my mom and dad as my mom became, in hindsight, going through early dementia, and she became quite aggressive. And when she wanted to go on a spending spree, she would go, and my dad couldn't control. So it was pretty much important for me to learn about that and be prepared to support both my dad and mom through this. And I did have a few good, healthy dialogues, not to say confrontation, to make sure to put things back in order. But it turned out to be incredibly valuable. And then at one point, unfortunately, my dad had a mild stroke when he was 90. He had very little impact on it, but at that point in time, I still see the hand movement that says, "You take it over." And the beauty of it is that it was seamless. Not only I was well aware of all the affairs, I've already had access through the power of attorney, and most important is I knew how they like to manage their affair. And to this day, I still manage their affair the way they did, and I still keep my dad in copy of everything he does, even though I'm going to say he's less capable of doing so. And I feel very fortunate to have gone through that opportunity and be able to do it in what I think is the proper way that respects the way their values and beliefs and the way they like to do things. For the personal care management, I'm going to say that we didn't do as well with my parents because it's still a concept that was evolving. I did get a few dialogue, and my sister, who was the caregiver of the family, did have a number of conversation. But if I look back at what I've done for myself and what I pretty much advocate for everyone to do, is the first thing is to crystallize your own values, beliefs, and wishes under various circumstances. It's not easy to do, to preempt some circumstance, but I really encourage you to go through an advanced care plan if it's your own, because you may be confronting some decisions that are very hard, that you even haven't thought about it. So imagine how your caregiver and your surrounding people around you will be able to support you if they don't have that perspective. As I mentioned earlier, selecting your attorney for care and your care advocates, people that will be your caregiver, is important. It's not only about the one person you think is closest to you or you trust the most. It's someone that has the interest, the time, the passion, the compassion, someone that will be able to respect your wishes, even though they may differ from theirs. Someone that has the compassion. I could tell you, my sister's done an amazing job. She's the right person. I have compassion, but I could never do what she's done. So I'm going to encourage everyone to select carefully. As you go through the process of an care plan, be able to document and communicate is important. And the process documentation will really help crystallize one step further than you may have thought you crystallized your own wishes. And then it's important to also make sure that the medical history and any relevant information is understood. And we all know that, especially today, you could skip from one doctor to another and there's not continuity. I think the healthcare system is getting better in terms of having some centralized records somewhere. I think Quebec has actually done pretty well in that respect, but we're still far from where we want to be. So it's important to document. All this to say is that the PACT framework is there to get you to prepare for any circumstance and make sure there's a team around you that will be prepared, that understand your wishes, beliefs, and values, your wisdom. And it's all in the name that now you can live freely with peace of mind, knowing that should something happen, you have a team that will be able to take over. As Claire mentioned, I wrote a book on the subject. It's a storytelling book. You heard some of the stories today, but there's many more. Some are eye-opening stories. Some are stories that bring to light some best-in-class practice. It's an easy read. It's 145 pages. And one of the things I've done is I put a checklist at the end of each pillar, because what I've noticed is that people tend to zoom on one new aspect that they've learned through either reading my book or my presentations, but there's many more. So I encourage people to go every year to go back and go through the checklist and see what has been done and not done. The other thing I encourage is the concept of a yearly family meeting. It forces you to open up the communications with my family, and we could probably have a separate talk just on that subject.
Mhm.
As I'm learning a lot through my journey with my yearly family meeting, I'm on year 5. And just to let you know, I've given myself 10 years to get as deep and as broad as I'd like to discuss with my close family. So it's not a matter of rushing into it. Just like with my parents, we took 6 months to have that conversation. Take your time, but get the process started. So I'll close by make a pact with your loved ones, make a pact with yourself, give yourself peace of mind for life transition. Just plan, activate, communicate, transition. Thank you very much, and I welcome any questions you may have, Claire,
Yeah,
and
thank you
thank you.
so much. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation, Mark. We'll just pause for a second, just stop the sharing, and then Jonathan, you'll edit this part out so we can have it back and forth.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much. Really, I have to tell you, the slide that really stood out to me for me the most was the activate the 24-hour readiness. That is something that, and like you said, in life, you have to kind of like expect the unexpected. And if you had to all of a sudden, take over and operate and find out what are the wishes, where's the bank accounts, like, are you ready to have your family activate on your behalf in 24 hours? For me, that was probably the most powerful slide. I actually took a screenshot and I'm sending it to my husband and saying we need to talk about that. Um, what I wanted to say is that, when we talk about caregiving, and dementia, when I've done these focus groups in the past, and when you ask people what is the biggest stressor and this whole journey, and the number one response, unfortunately, is finances. Dementia is probably one of the most expensive diseases to manage on a financial standpoint, and the disease causes another disease called anosognosia, which many people are not aware. So it means loss of insight, and one of um, the early stages of dementia is that a person loses the ability to properly manage their finances, and they make all kinds of financial errors. And if a family isn't prepared, you could lose a significant amount of money. And you mentioned that in your earlier slides, as the memory issues come into play, there's really a loss of insight. And so unfortunately, there are many people who suffer from anosognosia, like they don't recognize the financial errors they're making. They don't recognize that there's a need to have a doctor's assessment, a cognitive assessment. So, in your case, I guess, it was positive that your parents were willing to do the work with you, right? That they were willing to be a partner, that they were willing to allow you to help them, right? Because that's not always the case.
Well, there was two things that I'm going to say there. First of all, I was very fortunate to intercept because really, in my definition, I got involved way too late, but early enough for in their situation. And yes, we were able to redirect and put a plan that was appropriate for the concerns of the time. But I just want to mention the one thing that I feel very, very fortunate is that as we went through different transition, and I didn't mention them all, but my parents went from the property in Laurentians to an apartment to a decision to move to retirement home in a two-bedroom apartment to splitting them up, one going back to a one-bedroom apartment, now assisted living with two rents. Uh, Pretty difficult times as my mom's dementia was aggressive, and there was a lot of difficult time and additional expenses at that. Through CHL did, and my dad now has actually moved from the independent side to all these. So there was a lot of transition. But what I want to say is that throughout all these transition as a family, the finance were never part of the decision criteria. Is what is the right thing for mom and dad and the right quality of life. And I could say today that the only way we were able to achieve that is by having that rainy day protection, knowing it was there and knowing that it would survive time. And so I feel very fortunate that um, none of us had to worry about the financial and do the right decision. And it's already hard enough to make the decision. And when you bring the financial, you have all the repercussions that you just mentioned and you know so much
Mhm.
about. And that, without mentioning that, luckily I intercepted before. If you don't intercept, then whatever foundation could have been there financially could
Mhm.
disappear very quickly. And it could have been the case with my father-in-law. Luckily, we intercepted at the right time.
It was interesting for the slides with your rainy day protection. So my dad passed away in 2005 from congestive heart failure, and I came from very humble background. And the number that you had, so it was a ballpark around that 300,000. That was the life savings that he had accumulated. In 2006, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And as we know, and as you mentioned, like you can't really just access the healthcare system at the beginning. So you need to go the private route. And within 5 years, the $300,000 was completely spent all on her care. Like that. So that was like that rainy day money gone in 5 years. Now she lived 10 years with the disease, right? So when we say to have rainy day protection, that as soon as I saw the number 300,000, I'm like that for us that lasted 5 out of the 10 years of her care.
Yeah.
When she finally went into public system, so the monthly cost was obviously a lot less. But today in Quebec, for example, if you're looking in the private care, I mean, between or whether you're in a residence or home care support, you have to look. It's the ballpark is between $15,000 and $20,000 a month for full-time round-the-clock care.
Yeah.
So the rainy day is really something you have to take into consideration.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not the subject of this presentation, but there are some planning methods that
Mm-hmm.
you could do properly and without getting too large into your rainy day protection. So that's the risk. As you saw, when you're 60, I make it a little larger because there's could be a lot of unknown over and above your healthcare situation. But if it's done properly and there's no one size fit all, you have to have a lot of conversation, really clarify your
Mm.
situation and your objective and your wishes, and then a proper plan could be put together.
Yeah. Well, I think that the overarching message of today is really for people to have those yearly family meetings, communicate your wishes, so that your family can execute your wishes, right? And in December I gave an in-person lecture to a group of 50 people, and actually the first question I asked them was, "So how many people in this room have a will and you've communicated your wishes to your family members?" And out of the 50, only 10 people raised their hand, right? So I think it's very important to be prepared. And when you mentioned that fireproof black box that your parents have, I actually have the big trunk that my father arrived with when he came to Canada many years ago in my office, and that's where he had kept his will. And I actually have it in my office. It was so
Oh,
funny because
nice. That's very nice.
that's what it was. Marc, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I encourage everyone to get a copy of Marc's book, especially as a McGill alumni. And really, thank you so much. I think that this talk is going to benefit so many people.
Well, thank you for having me. And if I make one, two, or three people step back and put a plan together and be prepared, that's gratifying to me. That's why I do this. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Well, this webcast is an initiative of the McGill University Dementia Education Program, which is funded by private donations. If you would like to make a contribution to our program, please visit our website at mcgill.ca/dementia. And if you would like to join our mailing list to be notified about upcoming episodes of McGill Cares, as well as other important program initiatives, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website as well, or you can email us at dementia@mcgill.ca. Thank you for watching.